Welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires. I'm Adrian Smith, and I'm really excited for today's story.
And I'm Julia Jones, always ready for a good sci-fi fantasy blend.
You know, we talk a lot about these crazy genre mashups,
Oh, yeah.
but this one's really something special.
It is. It really is.
We're going back to the Irish Famine, a time of, just incredible suffering.
Right. Really bleak period in history.
Yeah, and right in the middle of all that, vampires.
It's not the typical setting you'd expect, right? I mean, when you think vampires, you
There's
think
castles.
exactly. Or like shadowy cities, dark alleys, that kind of thing.
Not exactly, starving peasants and potato blight.
Definitely not. But that contrast, that's what makes this story so interesting.
It really does. And the vampire we meet, Liam, he's not your classic charming bloodsucker.
Oh, no, not at all.
He's ancient, yeah, but he's also deeply affected by the suffering he sees.
He's almost, well, empathetic.
Yeah, it's like he's not just hungry for blood, he's, I don't know, wrestling with his own humanity.
Yeah. It's like witnessing all that human misery sort of awakens something in him.
Right, like a conscience maybe?
Maybe. Something he's been suppressing for centuries.
So how does that play out in the story?
Well, there's this really powerful scene where Liam encounters another vampire.
Okay.
And this other vampire, he's doing what vampires do.
Preying on the weak.
Exactly. He's found this woman. She's clearly starving and weak, easy prey.
And Liam, how does he react?
He's disgusted. Not hungry, disgusted.
Wow.
Like completely repulsed by it. The story describes him feeling the surge of anger.
Anger, not the typical vampire response.
Right. And that's what makes Liam so different. He's not just a monster acting on instinct.
So he's not just a mindless predator.
No. He's something more complex. He's making a choice, a moral choice.
So what happens? Does he just walk away?
No, he does the
He
opposite.
confronts the other vampire.
He does. There's a fight, and Liam wins.
Okay, so he saves the woman.
He does. But then he's faced with this incredible dilemma.
What do you mean?
He's overcome with this urge to feed.
On the woman he just saved.
Yes. But instead of giving in, he offers her his own blood.
He what?
What?
Offers her, a vampire off a human his blood. That's unheard of.
It is. And that's the turning point for Liam. Instead of preying on her, he chooses to protect her.
Wow. That's a huge moment.
It is. It's a moment of profound struggle for him. The story describes it as him choosing compassion over instinct.
So he goes from predator to protector.
Yes. And that's where things get really interesting. Welcome back to Robots vs. Vampires.
So we left off with Liam, this ancient vampire, making a pretty radical choice.
A choice that really sets him apart from the other vampires in the story.
Yeah, like he's actively choosing to be different, to fight against his nature.
He's not romanticizing his vampirism, that's for sure.
No, not at all. He's grappling with it, trying to reconcile this monstrous side of himself with this newfound empathy.
It's like he's more human than the vampires who are, perfectly fine with taking advantage of the famine.
Yeah, that's a good point. He seems to be struggling with a conscience more than they are.
It's almost like he's holding himself to a higher standard.
So how does he actually live like that? I mean, he still needs to feed, right?
He does. He doesn't pretend that he doesn't need blood.
Right.
But he finds ways to do it without harming the innocent. There's a scene where he takes a little bit of blood from a wealthy landowner.
Okay.
This guy's hoarding food while his tenants are starving.
So Liam's kind of like taking from the greedy to survive.
It's almost like he's created his own, moral code, a way to satisfy his hunger without making the suffering worse.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
He's not bound by, some ancient vampire law that says he has to prey on the weak.
No, he's making his own choices.
So it really makes you think about what it means to be a monster.
Right. It does. Is it about what you are, physically? Or is it about what you do, how you act?
And it's all happening against this backdrop of just unimaginable suffering, the famine.
Yeah, it's like a real test for his newfound morality.
He's surrounded by the worst of humanity and the worst of, vampire. Arity.
But he's also seeing acts of kindness, people helping each other.
It's like the author's showing us that even in the darkest times, there's still good.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of symbolism in the story that reinforces that idea.
Yeah, like what?
Well, remember the old woman with the rosary?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about religion, it's about faith, hope.
Hope that even when things are terrible, there's something bigger out there.
And the boy protecting his sister with that broken piece of pottery.
Yeah, that was a powerful image.
It shows resilience, love in the face of just awful circumstances.
So these little things They take on a bigger meaning.
They become symbols of what people hold on to when everything else is falling apart.
The things that keep us going.
And it brings us back to that idea of redemption.
Right, like Liam trying to be better, even though he's a vampire.
He's not denying what he is, but he's trying to integrate it with this empathy he feels.
It's like he's on this constant journey.
Yeah, it's a struggle. He might have won the fight against that other vampire, but he's still battling himself, you know?
His own urges.
Exactly. It's like a reminder that redemption isn't this one-time thing.
It's a process.
It's something you have to work at every day.
Which is something we can all relate to, right? I mean, we all have our own struggles.
We do. We all have that darkness inside us to some extent.
And Liam's story gives us hope that even a vampire can find a way to be better.
It's a message that resonates, especially with the famine as the backdrop.
Yeah, that historical context makes it even more powerful.
The famine was real. It caused so much suffering.
But by adding this fantasy element, this vampire who's trying to do good,
It lets the author explore these bigger themes, these questions about good and evil, redemption.
and it leaves us with some really big questions to think about.
Like, can a vampire really find redemption? Can any of us truly escape our own darkness? And how do we find hope when the world feels so hopeless?
Those are some heavy questions.
They are.
But they're important ones.
Definitely. And I think we need a little time to process all of that.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. Liam's story it's deceptively simple, but there's so much depth to it.
It really makes you think.
And that's what we're all about here on Robots versus Vampires, right? Exploring these fascinating stories, these blends of sci-fi and fantasy, and seeing what they can teach us about ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. So let's take a moment to absorb all of this and then come back to unravel the final threads of this amazing tale. Welcome back to Robots versus Vampires. It's really amazing how this story has unfolded.
Yeah, we started with this classic vampire trope, right? But then the author flipped it completely.
Liam's journey has been, well, unexpected to say the least.
And the setting, the famine, it just adds this whole other layer of complexity.
It really does. So where do we go from here? I mean, we've seen Liam's transformation, his struggle with his nature.
Right, he's not the stereotypical vampire we're used to.
Not at all. So what are the big takeaways here? What can we learn from Liam's story?
Well, I think the biggest one is that good versus evil, it's not so black and white.
Yeah, Liam's a vampire, but he's also incredibly compassionate.
It really makes you question your assumptions about what makes a monster, you know?
Is it about what you are or what you do?
Exactly. Liam's story suggests that it's about choices.
He's choosing to be better.
And that brings us to the theme of redemption, which is so central to this story.
Liam's not trying to erase his past. He's owning it.
He's trying to make amends for the harm he's caused.
And it's not easy for him. He's constantly fighting against his own instincts.
Right. He still has to feed. He's still a vampire.
But he's determined to do it without hurting innocent people.
It's like a constant struggle, this internal battle.
It's a powerful reminder that redemption isn't like a one-time event.
It's a process.
The journey.
Exactly. And it's something we can all relate to in our own lives.
We all have our own demons to fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not, literal bloodlust.
But we all have those urges, those temptations, those darker impulses we have to wrestle with.
And Liam shows us that even a vampire can choose a different path.
It gives us hope that even if we've made mistakes, even if we've done bad things,
We can still choose to be better.
we can still choose to do good in the world.
And it's important to remember that all of this is happening during the famine, right?
Yeah, that historical context makes it even more powerful.
There's all this suffering and despair around Liam,
But he still finds a way to be a source of hope.
not just for the people he protects, but for himself too.
It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Or, well, maybe the vampire spirit in this case.
The ability to find compassion even in the darkest of times.
Like that old woman with her rosary.
Yeah, she never gave up hope.
And the boy protecting his sister even though they were starving.
They're like symbols of resilience,
Uh-huh.
reminders that even small acts of courage can make a difference.
It's like the author is saying that hope can exist anywhere, even in a famine.
And that hope can inspire us to keep fighting, to keep believing in something better.
And that's a message I think we all need to hear, especially these days.
The world can feel pretty bleak sometimes,
It can.
but Liam's story reminds us that we always have a choice.
We can choose to give in to despair, or we can choose to fight for something better.
We can choose to be the helpers, the protectors.
And those choices, they matter.
They have a ripple effect. They inspire others.
So as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with this thought.
What if we all tried to be A little more like Liam.
What if we all made a conscious effort to choose compassion over cruelty, hope over despair, action over apathy? What kind of world could we create?
That's a powerful question,
It is.
and it's one we should all be asking ourselves.
So thank you for joining us on this incredible journey with Liam.
We hope you found it as thought-provoking as we did.
We'll be back next time with another captivating story, another blend of sci-fi and fantasy, another chance to explore the complexities of the human and sometimes the not-so-human experience.
Until then, keep seeking the helpers, keep fighting for hope, and keep choosing to be the best versions of yourselves. We'll see you next time on Robots vs. Vampires.